If you're 40 pounds overweight and you're tired and you have sleep apnea, you're pre-diabetic, what you've been doing is not working. You have to make a change.
You made a great decision to tune into this podcast and listen to Sean McCormick. You're going to know in this podcast about biohacking, power sleep, weighted blankets, and fasting. Plus, you're going to have specific examples, stories, and action ideas very few people have ever even heard about. And as a result, you're going to feel excited and motivated to build an even better you mentally and physically. Plus, you're going to hear about 2 + 2 = 4, not 5. What's that about? Stay tuned.
Imagine a professional soccer player comes to you and asks, is there any way I can achieve more in my career than I ever have, even though I'm only a few years from retiring? I want to increase my strength, increase my endurance, and increase the number of years I can play professional soccer. What would you tell him? I know exactly what I would tell him to do. Contact Sean McCormick. Sean is a certified life and performance coach that has worked with professional football and soccer players, CEOs, and television stars. Sean first began studying and applying hundreds of different health and performance approaches for himself, and when he found out what worked, he began to share this with his clients. What he discovered is there's a way to get the most from the least. Now, that sounds almost counterproductive, but it works. With faster recovery, better sleep, lifestyle improvement, and rapid improvement. Sean's mindset is to achieve the greatest amount of results with the least amount of work. And who doesn't want that? Please help me welcome Sean McCormick.
Yeah, right on. Oh yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. I'm into it.
So Sean, there's all this what you call biohacking, right? And this is a big, almost kind of like a slang term in the science and body hacking and life optimization world. This word biohacking, which means a lot and means a little to most people. They don't really know what this word. So first, let's briefly talk about like what is biohacking.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you guys initially for having me. Watching the way that you do the work that you do. We've talked a couple of times before and our rapport is really fantastic. So it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah. Biohacking it's on a spectrum really. And on one end of the spectrum, biohacking is using natural healing modalities to improve your health, improve your focus, improve your sleep, improve your performance overall. On the other end of the spectrum, biohacking also includes like subdermal injections, putting a computer in your forearm and, trying to live to 1,000 years old. So it's both transhumanism at one end of the scale and breath work at the other end of the scale. Okay. The way that I really like to think about it is it's accounting for what goes in you, on you, and around you, and making changes to optimize your health. So if you think about what that implies, right? What goes in you is pretty obvious, nutrition. What goes in you is also what you read. What goes in you is what are the things you're absorbing through your skin? How we are sponges biologically. So what are we absorbing in through and consuming and drinking and smoking and, all day long? What goes on you includes, are you surrounding yourself? Are you wearing clothes that have been used and washed with heavy detergents that are estrogenic in nature, that are making you moody and suppressing your immune system and screwing with your hormones? And then around you is including environmental factors. How clean is the air that you're breathing? Is the electricity in your house grounded properly, or do you have dirty electricity happening all the time that's signaling to your central nervous system that you should be in fight or flight response? Even the light that we expose ourselves to during the day, thinking about our circadian rhythm, all of these things that are around us is how can we hack it? Meaning, how can we make subtle changes to what goes in us, on us, and around us so that we can be our healthiest, youngest, fittest, strongest, sharpest, fastest, sexiest versions of ourselves for as long as we possibly can. That's sort of the high notes.
Awesome. Great answer. And what would you say, so in terms of this biohacking and all the areas that you've helped people in, what would you say are like 1 or 2 areas that you've seen the most results from?
The most results that I've seen is sleep. A lot of people really struggle with sleep and they don't know why. And there are a number of things that you can do that will immediately make a difference. And this does apply to, the principal in a venture capital fund, and also, a starting kicker for an NFL team. We all have to recover. And if you're not ever recovering effectively, if you're not getting deep rest, then you're screwed. I mean, sleep, you can actually live longer without eating than sleeping. So you can actually live longer. Well, breathing is number one, of course, but you can go longer without food or water than you can without sleep. You just lose your mind. So sleep is certainly the first thing. And then, there's probably about 4 or 5 different things that are tied for number 2. And for me, in the work that I do with people, mentality is massive. Mentality is everything. Working with neurolinguistic programming techniques, personal affirmations, reframing how we use our self-talk, reprogramming our subconscious mind. These are things that a lot of people just have no idea how to do, have never heard about it, have never thought about it. And when they make these subtle changes to their mentality, their subconscious mind, which is really driving the bus, then their whole lives change. They see things differently. They see themselves differently, and their partners differently, and their businesses differently, their performance differently. So those are kind of, I guess, the 2. Like sleep is certainly number 1, and then our psychological factors is probably number 2.
So what would you say is the biggest thing in sleep? What are the methods that you've used to get the most results?
Yeah, great question. So now we're getting into details, right? Nitty gritties. Right. There's a bunch of things that we can do to improve our sleep. And it obviously starts the day before and the day before and the day, improving your sleep started weeks ago. One of the most essential biohacking tools that I use, and that I have my clients use, is blue blocking glasses. Blue blocking glasses that you wear at night after the sun goes down is amber colored lenses that you wear after the sun goes down to block harmful blue and green light that comes from screens. So, 3-4 generations ago, our families, our ancestors were not exposed to blue light after the sun went down. It just didn't exist. There was, candles. Sure. There was some artificial light that happened from candles, but we're talking about like LED lights in our homes after the sun goes down. Blue and green lights that come from tablets and cell phones and televisions after the sun goes down is signaling to your brain that it's daytime. So that Netflix habit that you have until 10:30 every single night, there's no wonder that you don't feel tired, because all of that blue light that's coming from those screens is getting passed through your eyes and telling you that it's daytime. So that's why people aren't tired when they should be tired. So establishing a new circadian rhythm, an appropriate circadian rhythm, eating earlier, stopping drinking water earlier, lowering the lights inside your house, dimming them or turning them off, or installing red light bulbs in your home. Those can all be environmental that's around you, right? So those environmental factors that you consider will immediately help you realize that you have more sleep drive, which is like a motivation to sleep. So at like 9 o'clock, the sun's been down for an hour and a half. It's like, oh, I'm starting to relax and feel tired. I'm going to maybe start making some moves towards the bed. And then there are a bunch of internal in you factors, right? If you have, your gut health affects your sleep, what you're eating, how you're eating, this also takes into consideration, supplementation if required. So if you need like a little bit of melatonin to get you ready for sleep, that's fine. Lemon balm, lavender. Lavender is estrogenic to a large extent. I think it's overused by a lot of people. So those are a couple of the key factors. It's really about lifestyle design. It's really about scheduling your days and executing in a way that you're not just making yourself just stay awake until 11:30, because what happens is at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, that when it's dark out, your body should be making its own melatonin from inside your body that will start signaling to your brain and to your body, hey, it's almost time to get ready to go to sleep. If you don't turn off the television until 10, and then we're being modest there. I mean, it's really for a lot of people, it's like, don't turn off the TV till 10. And then you go into the bedroom. And I've always said this, there's two things you do in the bedroom. There's only two. You don't bring phones into the bedroom. There's two things. You can imagine which two things you do in the bedroom. So if you've got your phone in front of you as you're ready to go to sleep at night, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to turn my phone off and now it's time for me to go to sleep. It doesn't work like that. People don't. So when you do that, then it delays the process of melatonin creation inside of your body, inside of your brain. And that means that you don't feel tired. So you're not really hitting deep sleep until like 3 or 4 in the morning. And that means that if you're an early riser, go-getter type, by 6 a.m., 7 a.m., you've only had like a couple of hours of opportunity to have that deep sleep that cleans up your brain, that converts short-term memory to long-term memory. So there's biohacks that we can use. I've been using a weighted blanket for the last month. I did a whole episode on the power of weighted blankets. Have you guys ever tried these before?
I have not. When I was a kid, my aunt owned a ranch, and she owned this huge ranch, and it was a historically redesigned house. And in that house, she had like very heavy deer skin blankets and stuff. And so I remember as a kid, man, this blanket is so heavy. This is ridiculous, because I wasn't used to it, but that's my only experience with a very heavy blanket.
Probably fell asleep in just a moment. There is incredible science and studies that show that using a weighted blanket, mine's 12 pounds. I use a 12-pound weighted blanket. My wife and I don't share blankets because I am hot like a werewolf and she is not. She's a little cooler. So I've been using this 12-pound weighted blanket, and there's science that supports it's like deep pressure touch. So if you have ADD, ADHD, you've got autoimmune disease, having that weight on you when you're ready to go to sleep, that it feels like a hug. It's super cozy and you fall asleep really, really quickly. So these are some devices, some lifestyle things that people can do before you start screwing with, droppers of melatonin and doing a bunch of like vitamins and stuff. Although I'm a big fan of CBD, there's a bunch of things that you can do naturally to hack your sleep. So that's just a couple of ideas.
Well, Sean, could I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
So how would somebody who seems to sleep well and doesn't feel that this is an issue, since you put this as number one in importance, sleeping, what would be the red flags that somebody would experience to alert them that maybe they aren't sleeping as well as they think they're sleeping?
Great question. Really great question. I think the first thing is, do you wake up feeling rested? If you've been waking up and you feel tired, that's the first sign that you did not get deep sleep. You may have got your 8, but if your 8 are terrible, if your 8 hours are peppered with wakefulness, and you took a trip to, you went and used the bathroom 2 or 3 times, and you wake up and you're like, you got bags under your eyes and you feel tired, and you've got dry mouth is another indicator. It means that you're opening your mouth while you're sleeping. You're likely snoring. You're making your bed partner angry. So there's ways to hack that too. You can do what's called mouth taping, which is exactly what it sounds like. You can actually tape your lips shut So when you sleep, you're forced to breathe through your nose. It's an incredible hack. I don't really need to mouth tape anymore, but I did for a while. And then I also use a nose strip over my nose to open up my airways. So those are a couple of really key things. There are also some pretty reliable sleep trackers that you can wear so that you know how much REM did I get last night. These are imperfect, but there's some tools. So you can get a Fitbit. You can get what's called an Aura ring, which will actually track your sleep cycles. Will actually show you how did you get into phase 2 or phase 3 sleep. But intuitively, if you wake up and you're still tired, that's a really good sign that you're not getting the sleep. Brain fog is also a part of it. If you feel foggy and you have to have caffeine just to feel like a human being every single day, then that's that's probably a signal. There's this other thing too that I've just been really interested in lately, which is a lot of us have electrolyte imbalances, especially guys that have to wake up and pee 2-3 times a night. Oftentimes we're peeing because our electrolytes are off. We don't have enough sodium, potassium, magnesium in our systems, and so our body is trying to flush out. Obviously there's prostate stuff that you have to think about as a guy, but for the fellas, you can hack that waking up and having to go to the bathroom if you have enough electrolytes in your system. And I'm lucky enough to have this really great sponsor of my podcast that makes an electrolyte packet. I've told literally like 10 people about just this one thing. Like, you need just this one packet of salty drink every single day. And guys are like, oh my God, I've been having to wake up at 3 a.m. for the last like 10 years. And I didn't have to do that last night. It's a total game changer. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
You want to share what the product's called?
Yeah, it's LMNT. It's LMNT. It was created by Rob Wolf, who's basically the father of the paleo movement, and a biochemist. It's sodium, potassium, and magnesium. This is like the Gatorade alternative. Gatorade's terrible. There's a ton of sugar and colorants and what is red number 7 anyway. Like, you shouldn't be consuming that stuff. And so you can go to drinklmnt.com/OP, and there's a special offer. But it's a game changer for a lot of guys.
You've mentioned breathing a number of times. I know Robbie knows. So what about, I'm reading Breath by James Nestor. And what do you think about that when you mentioned taping your mouth, nose breathing, and so on?
Yeah, James is incredible. In fact, I've been trying to get him on my podcast for a while. He's really well insulated, so I've been trying to get to him from different angles. It's just a matter of time before he comes on. That I have not read that book, but I have heard nothing but incredible things about how he approaches things. There's so much in it. It is such an essential thing. Children who are mouth breathers, their jaws narrow. And that leads to snoring and also cognitive development. We have to keep our mouths shut and our tongues up at the top of the roof of our mouth to mew. It's called mewing, which is to keep the tongue up to the top of your mouth, which spreads out the soft palate on the roof of your mouth and allows for more air passageway through your throat. It's the type of thing like that is excellent biohacking, because we've known this for a long time. Any sort of spiritual practice, any sort of, if you look especially to the East, there are techniques to breathe and to optimize our breath. And we have gotten away from it, and we have not made it a focus because there's so many other, shiny things that we can focus on when it comes to our health. But for me, breathing is essential. Have you picked up anything from that book, Joel, that you thought was really insightful?
Yes, I just, working out with Robbie and his trainers all these years, when I first started reading the book, I became conscious of breathing through my nose during a workout as opposed to my mouth. And one of the things I do, we have a big circular drive, and for warm up, I do the fastest walking I can do. And the first time I tried it, I had my personal best by 2 seconds. And all I did differently was breathe through my nose. So I saw an immediate increase, I guess, in energy doing that. And I think it's just a habit that you get into. And who would have ever thought that? He was at a meeting that I was at, and that's how I met James, and he gave a talk, and then we all got his book. So it's been a fascinating read, but he'd be a great one for your podcast.
Yeah, he would be. Yeah. That book, his book and his work, the content that he puts out, he's a really great content creator. Yeah, it's essential and we forget it, there's, we can use it for so many different things. There's the 4-7-8 breath, which was, Dr. Andrew Weil came up with, which is 4 seconds in, 7 seconds hold, 8 seconds out. And that is like to really quickly relax your central nervous system. There's alternate nostril breathing, in through the left nostril, out through the right nostril, to like create a pump inside your nose to get your lymphatic system begin to flush. I've done this stuff with my kids. I work with this acupuncturist he's on another level, but he's like, yeah, you should do this. You can either do one nostril breathing or you can do alternate nostril breathing. There's all these things that can change so much in such a short amount of time. And yeah, breath is the fundamental thing for sure.
We had James Nestor on our Fitness Secrets podcast two episodes ago. And so anyone who's listening to this, if you want to get the full details on breath and nose breathing and which nostril produces a sympathetic nervous system uplift, so energy, and then the other side nostril creates relaxation. If you want to get all those details, go just 2 episodes back and you'll find James Nestor there. And I can work on getting you connected there, Sean.
Yeah, hook me up, man.
Well, since Robbie didn't say anything, well, one of the things that's unique about this podcast, we're bringing the old and the new. Since I'm almost twice Robbie's age, it's interesting, everything you've said, even though your background is so heavily geared to, let's call it the professional athlete or the high endurance person or somebody who's at a high level of fitness. I think virtually everything you've shared, Sean, applies to anybody, no matter whether they're a world-class athlete or somebody with no athletic ability that just wants to be in better physical condition.
Yeah, this is not dependent on your physique. This is not dependent on your, whether you're a champion or not. You're right. It's totally true. You do not have to be an elite performer to get the benefits from this stuff. If you're a 9-to-5er and you have to get up and go to work tomorrow, you're going to want to make sure that you're slept well. You're going to want to make sure that you've got the right mental perspective to be your best. And yeah, it's really worth mentioning that these sorts of techniques that I've talked about and that I have on my podcast and the things that I work with one-on-one with people is this super wide range of different things that you don't have to be an elite level performer in order to get the benefit from it.
Can you tell a success story of somebody before and after, and from your experience, a client, without divulging maybe their name, but an experience that you've had where somebody, let's say on a 1 to 10 on the fitness and health level, was like a 1 or a 2, and then they started doing the things you're talking about and they moved way up that scale, became an 8 or a 9.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of my clients that I was working with locally here in the Seattle area, he's way up there at Amazon, way up there. They have a tiered system. He's like down the hall from Bezos, really high level guy. A lot of people depend on him, really creative, brilliant. And his wife booked the introductory coaching session for him, which kind of tells you what sort of situation we were talking about. His wife booked the session. He calls me and he's like, hey, just to let you know, my wife booked this for me. I don't really know who you are, what this is, what we're doing here. and I'm sure you're good, but I have very low expectations for this conversation today. And I said, well, thank you for telling me that up front. Thank you for telling me that. And then we jumped in. We did our initial coaching strategy session together. And it only took a few minutes for him to understand that there was a bunch of things that he was ignoring in his life. We did a coaching tool called the life positioning system, where he was grading the different areas of his life on a scale of 1 to 10. And professional development is one of those categories. And he was crushing it. He was like a 9, incredible. And then we got to family, and we got to health, and we got to life purpose and romance and intimacy. And those were like 5 or below. So money was great. Professional development was great. But these other areas that he was neglecting, that he really wasn't paying attention to, really were putting at risk all of his hard work in his professional life. He was on blood pressure medication. He was pre-diabetic. He was drinking too much. He was sleeping poorly. He was he was really taxed. He was really stressed from the expectation that comes from being an Amazon C-class or C-suite person. And so at the end of this very, very quick coaching strategy session, he said, Sean, I don't know what to say. I'm both very upset with you and also am compelled to hire you right now on the spot because you have uncovered so many things that I have been ignoring for such a long time. And I said to him, well, great, but in order for you to really advance, you've got to be willing to undo all of these things that have gotten you where you're at. You can continue to be your best self professionally, but if you don't manage your health, it's going to be all for naught. If you don't reconnect with your wife and children, you're going to be in a tough spot. If you don't get your sleep figured out, and this was actually one of the first things that we worked on was his sleep. He was just fight or flight all the time, too much cortisol. So over the course of working together, we worked together for a year. In the course of that year, he leveraged an exit from his position at Amazon. He wanted to work less. He wanted to make more and have less stress. And so by the end of that year, it was about month 8 or 9, he left his position at Amazon where he was working 80 hours a week, like all day, all night, took a VP position at another, at a startup company. He got a 25, which we're talking big numbers here, 25% salary increase, and had $1 million bonus on the table when the company went public. They have now gone public. He got his bonus, but more importantly than any of that stuff, he's off of his blood pressure medication. He's off of his antidepressants. He's no longer pre-diabetic. He's lost a bunch of weight. He's sleeping. He's talking to his wife again, like he's going on trips with her. He's talking to his kids. Oftentimes it's our blind spots. It's our blind spots that we don't account for that can undo everything. It puts all of your legacy at risk when you don't take into account your blind spots. And that work, like I know you guys have all worked with coaches and mentors. You've been coaches and mentors for others. You really have to work with someone that's going to not be a yes man for you, that has to actually call it like they see it. Someone who is skilled that can say, hey, listen, here is a mirror. I'm going to put this mirror up. This is you. These are the problems that you have. Let's find out a plan and execute that plan so that we can move forward. So that was a really good one. And I still do a session with him once a quarter now, is to like check in and do some connection. But that was a big one. That's up there as among my favorite.
That's awesome story. I'm sitting here thinking about Joel. I'm thinking about two big things. Well, first is the best book I've ever read, and I've been doing personal development audios and Highway University and listen to all this stuff for 22 years now. The best book I've ever read is The Power of Now. I personally, that's my personal opinion, is the best. And there's either inner success or outer success, and you can't have both. You can have both. And what I'm hearing you say is this guy had a lot of outer success, but he didn't really have the inner success. And we try to build our egos and find this happiness that you'll never find by going after all this outer success, and it's painful to touch the inner, so you end up having that reflection to those around you, and especially those closest around you, right? And I think The Power of Now is an amazing book. Have you ever read that book, Sean?
Yeah, I have.
Just love that book. And so then I started thinking about Joel. Joel's had situations in his career where, he could have made, he's done very, very well, but he could have done even 5, 10x very well better. And he's chose not to, so that he can spend time on his houseboat, be connected with his kids, and live that life. And, it's so unique because now he's 79 today, this year, right? 79 now. And he's more like productive and energetic than like most 25-year-olds. But it's just, listening to you, I have to mention Joel because it's knowing him for 21 years, he's a walking billboard of living that life. Yeah.
Well, that's all because of your training. Taking over Sean's job to do that. Tell it like it is and show me the right way to do it. And, as I've told people, you got to take care of your body because it carries your head around.
Yeah.
And, if you're not in good physical condition, you can't do the things that your mind really wants you to do.
Yeah, that's so true.
I attribute a lot of that to Robbie and his guidance. But it is true that, everything you said, the one thing you didn't really get into in detail, you kind of threw it into that third category. I wrote down sleep, the psychological or mental portion, and then maybe the third was like your lifestyle. And you mentioned a bunch of things in there, but highlighted very little on one of the things that everyone on this podcast is doing, and that's eating. So what about food and drink? What are your biohacks, and what would add value to the listener as they are hearing these words of wisdom from you?
Yeah, great question. Great question. This guy that I mentioned before was overweight, pre-diabetic, and he didn't know how to eat. He didn't realize that the food that he was eating wasn't serving him. It wasn't helping him. So for me, intermittent fasting is massive. Intermittent fasting is basically eating within a window every single day. So a lot of my clients end up eating between a window of 12, so noon, and 6 or 8 p.m. We are not giving our vital organs enough time to catch up with our digestion. We're kind of stuck to this carb cycle where we have to eat crackers or apples or cookies or whatever sugary drinks, every 90 minutes just to stave off the brain fog. And so what I have been focusing on for a long time, and I've experimented with a lot of different techniques. This one guy specifically, I said, hey, you got to stop eating breakfast. And he's like, whoa, wait a minute. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And I said, well, do you know where that term comes from? And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, why is that a thing that people say? And he said, I didn't have no idea. And I said, well, the founder of Kellogg's cornflakes came up with that term in a marketing campaign to keep people eating breakfast. And this is going to get graphic, to stave off masturbation. The guy, Mr. Kellogg, came up with breakfast is the most important meal of the day so that people would eat his cornflakes. And he created his cornflakes as a way to eat bland food so that he didn't get excited, so that he didn't get into sexual perversion. I am not making this up. I'm not making this up. So I said to him, breakfast is not the most important meal of the day. Breakfast is not necessarily the thing that you need to be doing. You need to be consuming fewer calories, and you need to reset your metabolism in addition to your palate, your cravings. And he said, so no more oatmeal in the morning. And I said, for you, no, we need to practice and reset your metabolism. So he started to do it. Instead of having a bowl of oatmeal followed by an apple and followed by a banana, what he did was he would skip breakfast and have coffee, just coffee on its own. And what he found was he was actually way more productive without food in his stomach for the first half of the day. He would break his fast with protein and with vegetables. So we sort of got out of the carb cycle, got into ketosis. So ketosis, eating ketogenically, is allowing your body and your brain to operate on fat instead of carbs. And it took a long time to get him there, but he was basically just eating meat and vegetables. And so that was his fuel. He didn't need carbs. He didn't need noodles or bread or sugar. He became fat adapted, and his cravings changed. And more than anything else, the two dietarily, quitting sugar is about the hardest thing that we can do. Robbie, I assume that you stay away from sugar, sugar by a fair amount. You don't have a physique like that by eating sugar every day. It's harder to get off sugar than it is some hard drugs. I mean, there are studies that show that sugar is super addictive. And so we, over time, changed his eating, changed when he ate, what he ate, and then he began to look at food in a different way. He began to see food as fuel rather than as a party. You know, this 2 minutes of mouth pleasure that you get from a Costco muffin. You know, it's like, oh, for 2 minutes, I'm just going to enjoy this Costco muffin, and it's going to taste so good. And then as soon as you're done with it, you're feeling guilty. You're upset with yourself. You feel brain fog. You get kind of stiff joints. You get that sugar high, and then you come back down. That if you can learn to get away from that 2 minutes of mouth pleasure, and then your life will change. So I hope that adds some perspective.
Just to add something from a personal thing, March 16th, 1981, Sean asked me what happened on that day.
What happened on that day?
I stopped eating sugar.
Oh, really?
And haven't had a single sweet since that day.
Oh my goodness, Joel.
Now, one of the things you mentioned is how difficult it is. And we know that sugar is addictive, just like alcohol and drugs are addictive. But yet you all know people, as you're listening to this message, that have stopped smoking instantly, who have gotten off of drugs instantly, and didn't have all of that withdrawal problem and desire to go back again. So it is possible if you have an epiphany, and maybe this podcast is an epiphany for you on what Sean is saying about the deadly sins of sugar. And that's what happened to me. And without getting into it, maybe someday we'll do it on this podcast. But basically, Sean, what happened, I'm sitting first class on an airplane coming back from Miami, doing a seminar for IBM. And the man next to me tells me pretty much what you said, but in a much meaner, nastier way than you did. It made such an impact that as a result, I never touched another sweet again. And I was truly in love with chocolate and Dunkin' Donuts and Baskins and Robbins, double scoop of burgundy cherry ice cream. Gone instantly. By the time I got off the plane, I'd made the decision, I'm never going to eat that again. I never have. And it doesn't take willpower. It takes understanding something. So I think, you know, what you're saying is so important. And it is possible, as you're listening to this podcast, once you see the truth, you let go of that false belief. So the analogy would be if you thought 2 + 2 was 5, Sean, and as a little kid, you made a mistake and the teacher showed you, maybe you were in first or second grade, and said, what is 2 + 2? And you said 5. And then that teacher, being a great teacher, showed you with 2 apples and 2 oranges, and you put them together, you got 4. You don't have 5. And at some point in that math lesson, your mind goes, I see it. How hard will it be for you to go back to 5? It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Now you're an adult. Is there anything anybody could do to convince you, Sean, that 2 + 2 is 5?
No, no.
No, you know that you know. And that's what happened on March 16th, 1981. I just knew he was absolutely right. And all of that false belief was gone instantly. Not discipline, not self-discipline, not willpower. Willpower doesn't work. It's knowing. And I think the way you've explained it, you as a listener should realize he just gave you an aha moment. So let go of those false beliefs.
That's wonderful. Joel, that is so incredible, man. I mean, I love that. I love that you know the date. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, it was, and I wrote him every year on that date. His name was Alvin Casuto. Stranger sitting next to me. I was in 1A and he was in 1B. And food came and he told me I was eating crap and proved it to me.
And Joel's a great person to learn from on these life hacks and biohacking and like the way to live your life. Because once he sees that, he's a little above average. So once he sees that, it clicks and he follows that routine like indefinitely. So it's and
well, wait a minute. No, let's go back to 2 + 2 is 5 or 4. If let's say you were really a slow learner as you're listening to this podcast, and you thought 2 + 2 was 5 for the last 20 years. Right. And then you meet a smart guy like Sean, who's a math teacher, and he shows you that 2 + 2 is 4. No matter how you cut it, it never will be anything but 4. And at some point, listening to Sean, you get it. How long will it take you to drop 5? Instantly. Once you see it's 4. And once you see it's 4, you can never go back. Sean told me there's nothing I could do to bribe him to think that 2 + 2 is 5.
So Joel,
I'm going to give you $20 right now. Could you make believe it's 5? No, it's not 5.
So how do you, because there's doctors, right? There's pulmonologists, right? The doctors of the pulmonary that smoke, and they know, they've seen the science, they've seen the black lungs, they know how, but what is because they make an emotional decision.
They haven't gotten it. If they got it, they might say it, they might tell others about it, they might share the science about it, but in their mind, they haven't accepted it.
So what goes through your mind to get a click that's above average for what most people click as efficiently as you do? Like the emotional
unrefutable evidence. And that's what this guy did on an airplane in 2 hours on a flight from Miami to Phoenix. He gave unrefutable evidence that what he was saying was true. And then he said, try it. And instantly I saw a difference. Instantly. And Sean, I have no idea why or how the body responds to sugar. But once I stopped eating the ice cream, cookie, candy, and cakes and all of that, my energy level soared. I wasn't heavy. I wasn't overweight. I was still able to do things, but I'm sure there was some, and I was 40 years old when that happened. So I've been doing it for a long time, but now it's almost 40 years later and haven't done it once. And it's not willpower. I mean, my kids eat sweets. My grandkids eat it. They can do a little bit. And then I guess that's okay. But that would be like saying, well, on Thursday, I'll accept that 2 + 2 is 5. Every other day it's 4, but on Thursday, I'm going to have crap.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
So I guess you asked, what do I have in my brain that happens? I don't think it's anything I have that's unique. I think the experience needs to be so impactful for an individual. Like people who go to a doctor and they say, well, we've just checked your lungs. If you take one more cigarette, you're going to die. So go home and say goodbye to your family and your kids, because you're never going to see them again. You're going to be dead. And I had a client that's what happened. He said by the time he got to his car, he had thrown away the cigarettes in his pocket. By the time he got to the car, he threw away the cigarettes in the car, and he never smoked again. And yet he had tried to stop 20 or 30 times in the years previously. But that experience with the doctor so impacted him the way it was said or presented, he got it. He saw at that moment 2 + 2 is 4. And if you just use that simple example, anything with math, because math numbers don't lie, any misconception you've had about math, for no matter how many years you've had it, changed instantly when somebody showed you what the truth was. And then you never go back.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a unique ability. I think it's the clarity of the message. And Sean, your ability to deliver this in a clear way is outstanding. and the examples that you've used. So what are some of the things you help people see when it comes to eating to get them to see 4s?
There are a ton of misconceptions about nutrition that so many people just sort of live by and just assume, they believe that they need, and I think, Robbie, I think you and I disagree with on nutrition to a little bit, to a certain extent, because balance. So let's just take, for an example, the food pyramid, right? The food pyramid, which has now made way for my plate. The food pyramid, at the very bottom of the pyramid, is you need like 4 to 6 servings of pasta, whole grains, flour,
6 to 11
a day.
Crazy. Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine, half a loaf of bread every single day, and that the government's saying, hey, that's what you should do.
Right.
And then it steps up, and then protein is like number 3 up the pyramid. We trust that because we believe that the government is looking out for us. And you are looking out for you.
Right.
That let's, don't get it twisted. Each of us individually have to take into consideration what we put in our mouth. Now it's my plate, and it's a little bit better, but it still suggests that you have, a quarter of your food is whole grains, all that stuff. The key is to let people understand that where they're at is a product of where they've been. So if you're 40 pounds overweight and you're tired and you have sleep apnea, you're pre-diabetic, what you've been doing is not working. You have to make a change. And oftentimes that has to be a radical change from what they've been doing. So it's been working. So let's use the example of my client. What he was doing in business was working. He was crushing it. He was doing really innovative work at Amazon. He was really successful. He was responsible for some life-changing technologies, working for arguably the most important company in the world. He was a heavy hitter. But if you're 40 or 50 pounds overweight and not talking to your children and on blood pressure medication and SSRIs, then a bunch of other things are not working. And so what it took was a drastic change in how he ate. And in this case, it was not eating at all. It was changing to intermittent fasting to break him from that conception that he needed to just wake up and shove his face with bread and oatmeal. For a lot of other people, it's tied to their stress too. They eat emotionally. They eat when they're stressed. They eat when they're bored. They eat for parties and fun. And disconnecting that relationship with food, renegotiating that arrangement that you have with the food that you're eating, is a really important first step to making changes. Then it's reinforced by the feeling that you get, like, holy shit, for the first 4 days, I'm sure, Joel, back in, March 17, 18, and 19 in 1981, those first 3 days off sugar, I don't know if you recall, but I'm sure that they were pretty lousy. And for a lot of people,
I don't remember that at all. I think that they were joyous. It was like I had gotten off of some kind of addiction.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting. My wife had just finished reading Sugar Blues, which was a book very popular in the late 70s. And she was so supportive of it as well. And she said, I think he's right. You should do that. So the goal was to just do it for 30 days. But within a day, I just knew based on how I felt. And again, remember, I wasn't a 1 or a 2. Maybe I was like a 7 on a 1 to 10 scale, but I jumped to like a 9, like the next day. And I don't know if it was the idea that because I felt so stupid thinking that 2 + 2 is 5 for 40 years. And I wasn't going back.
Yeah. Yeah. The biological response, and there's a bunch of explanations, it's cortisol, the switching from running on carbs to running on fats, not needing sugar to be able to focus or have energy. There's a lot of chemical explanation, but when you feel it, when you realize, oh man, like I wake up and my joints aren't creaking. I have mental clarity. I have all this extra energy. I'm not like planning my next bag of cookies. I'm not thinking ahead to that next bag of cookies or cigarette or whatever, these sort of compulsive behaviors. It often takes a clean break, just like you've outlined, Joel. It takes a decision, and then the benefits, people begin to experience those benefits. And that goes with a lot of different habits. It's not just nutrition, it's sleep, it's relationships. I mean, what other examples can you guys think of habits where you need to change the paradigm?
Well, working out, certainly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, exercise. What's interesting is most people exercise in a way that's artificial, the same way, and the footwear they use, the way they exercise, where it's come from like the Arnold Schwarzenegger days of appearance. So people go to the gym and work out for appearance and performance. And not that performance is bad, but if all your goal is to get your body to do more things or adapt to some, like how much you squat or how much you bench press, where is it written that you'll become healthier because you bench press more? Unless you're very, very weak, and then there's a health detriment. So there is that. But if you're benching 100, whatever, if Joel bench presses 110 pounds, that he's not going to be healthier to get to 150 pounds. But if he's rowing 110 and then he can get to 150, he will be healthier. Why? Why in one case versus the other? And the reason why is because Joel is a water skier and he needs to have tremendous back strength. And the scapula is the only bone in the body that does not connect bone to bone on both sides, right? It connects to soft tissue. So having the back very, very strong so that bone can connect to the back musculature is crucial. Because when you have that connection and it's so strong, then that part of the body is very stable. And that's the way the human is ideally designed to function. So when you think about the ideal function of the human, then you start thinking about exercise completely different than just these things that it's almost like outer success versus inner success. It doesn't matter to impress other people what you're lifting or what your body looks like. It matters that inner success of what your body was ideally designed to do, which is, I think, exactly what you're talking about, Sean, and that is how is the human ideally designed when to eat? As hunters and gatherers, do we wake up and have a 500-calorie breakfast ready and prepared for us? Probably not. And that's where I do agree with intermittent fasting. It makes a lot of sense, And then because that is the way in going to sleep, when we had lights out as hunter gatherers, and so lights out, you didn't have blue light, sun wasn't up anymore. You might have read something or told some stories, and you went to bed at 8 p.m. or something very early. So the things you're talking about make perfect sense. And when people start to live like that and they remove these external negative polluting stimuli, then they start to thrive, because that was the way that all of their ancestors were designed, is to live in that environment. And that goes into exercise, it goes into our life cycle and everything.
We are getting too comfortable. We're getting too soft. We're lacking discipline. All of these different things that have come from technological advancements. We have supercomputers in our pockets where we don't really have to think anymore or remember things, because we can just, how many of us heard in elementary school, you'll never have a calculator. You're not going to walk around with a calculator in your pocket. You've got to learn arithmetic, because you're never going to have a well, we do now. And what that does on top of, a trillion options on Netflix, on top of a culture of sitting, we should really be standing right now, on top of convenient foods and nutriently depleted foods, but that are palatable and designed to make us eat 1,000 of them. All of these factors come into the result of which we're getting slow and lazy and lacking discipline. And it's up to each of us to make the decision. Do you want to continually improve and get better and do things that are hard, that will make you stronger, that will lead you on a path of service and make you a happier person, a contributor to society? Or do you want to eat ice cream and watch Netflix and be stagnant? And I think for the people that are listening to your podcast are the people that are most interested in making improvements in their life. And I love the dynamic between the two of you guys, because there's so much wisdom between the two of you and perspective. And obviously, since you guys have known each other for such a long time, but I've seen you guys sort of challenge each other already just in this conversation, and challenge assumptions. And we have to have that in our life. We have to have people around us that will help us challenge our assumptions so that we, don't end up, eating, what was it? Cherries Jubilee
Burgundy
every night. Burgundy
Baskins
cherry.
and Robbins double scoop ice cream and a sugar cone.
Yeah.
The minute I get off the airplane, I would stop at the Baskins and Robbins shop and get that before I got home, no matter what time of day it was. So, but I want to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Could you give us a 24-hour review of your life? So like today, what time did you get up? What did you do? And what are you going to eat today?
Yeah. Excellent. Oh, I love this question. So I get up at 6 a.m. every day. I just sort of wake up naturally. Right before
what time did you go to bed? What time?
I was asleep by 10 o'clock last night.
Okay.
Yep. I'm up at 6. My kids are up shortly after that. And at that moment, the coffee's starting to brew. I've got a whole morning routine. I start with gratitude. As soon as I wake up, I think of 3 things that I'm grateful for. They have to be different every single day. This morning, the things that I was grateful for was the fact that I have subcontractors in my house. And you may be picking up on a little bit of chatter behind me. I have subcontractors in my house finishing a renovation. I'm thankful for the fact that I have the means to pay someone else to do sheetrock and drywall, because I don't like doing sheetrock and drywall. That was the first thing. The second thing was the fact that I have a very busy day today. I'm recording 2 podcasts. I have 2 coaching calls. So that's busy. I've got a couple other things that I have to do. The third thing was my wife and I connected in a cool way last night before we went to sleep, and I was thankful for bookending my day with a really sweet moment with my wife that I woke up feeling good about. From there, I went into the bathroom. I used the bathroom, and then I just learned this technique of pounding like Tarzan on your solar plexus. And it wakes up some sort of nerve, and I don't know what it is. I have a podcast coming out with what that does. So now I've just made this part of my morning routine. I pound on my chest, and then it starts to vibrate. It wakes up some sort of nerve. I'll have to go back and listen to it. I splash cold water on my face. I have a new face regimen now too, where I'm massaging my face first thing in the morning with oil. I go outside. I go into the kitchen. I do some stretching. I'm working on this posture. It's called the hero's pose, where you're sitting with your knees on the ground and you're leaning back onto your heels with a straight back. I work with a Vedic astrologer who's made some suggestions about some yoga poses that would help me increase my vitality. So I did that in the morning. And then I had coffee with cinnamon in it, made breakfast for the kids, got them going, went outside with the dog and took him for a little walk around our property. Now for the rest of the day, so it's 9:40 now. I won't eat until probably 2:00 today because my morning is pretty busy. So this will be my last.
You had no food till 2:00.
No food till 2:00. Yeah. Just coffee with cinnamon. And then at 2:00, I'm going to have liver and onions I'm going to have sardines, and I'm going to have some kimchi. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Most people
And
are
then
thinking, yum.
yeah, and then I'm a big kiss from my wife for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working through a gut issue. I have leaky gut that I've just been recently diagnosed, and I'm working through, and so I'm simplifying some of the foods that I'm eating, but I'm staying high protein. Um, my work day will consist. I'll probably take a couple of supplements later this afternoon. I'll take some. There's a ancestral supplements product called Mofo. And it's basically a male vitality supplement. It's got like cow brains, sheep testicles. It's got a bunch of organs in it. it helps in a lot of different ways. And then in the evening time, we're gonna have salmon tonight and asparagus. So the kids will have rice. My wife will have some rice, and I'll have salmon.
How about water?
Yeah, water. So I'm kind of obsessive about water, actually. I have a reverse osmosis system. So I live out on some property, and so I'm on a well, and my water comes into the house, and then it goes through a reverse osmosis system, which filters out particulates, heavy metals, sulfur, manganese, iron. It pulls it all out through this bladder system, through this RO unit, and then it remineralizes before it comes out of the faucet. So that water will come out, and usually I drink water with lemon in it because there's just good things for the body and good things for the skin. And I'll probably drink. I don't really measure it. I just sort of do it intuitively now, but I'll probably have 6 or 7 big giant glasses of water throughout the day. Depending on the day, I'm on an off week. This is going to be maybe too much information, but I'm going to share it anyway. It's kind of my style. I've been doing a psychedelic mushroom microdosing protocol. So this week I'm off, but the last 2 weeks I've been taking a microdose of psilocybin mushrooms. I don't know if you guys have heard of this or what the science is, but anxiety, depression, neuroplasticity, increased creativity, increased focus. It keeps your brain young and creative. And so I'm on an off week this week, but next week I will begin the microdosing protocol first thing in the morning with a sub-perceptible dose. Oftentimes I will take other sort of nootropics, smart drugs throughout the day. There's one of my favorite of all time is called Neurofuel, which is like four all natural products like artichoke extract, Foriolis forscoli, which is like a root, and it helps increase my focus and memory. So I might take that later in the day if I'm starting to crash mentally, since today's such a busy one.
We're speechless.
What's the latest you will have anything eating or drinking tonight?
Good question. Yeah, that does go back to sleep. That's super key for me. I'll stop, full stop at 8:00. I won't eat anything or drink anything after 8:00. I've got 2 small kids, 7 and 4. So we typically eat dinner at around 5:30 every single night. At my house, we sit at the table with the television off, and we actually talk to each other and share that moment every single night. It's really, really important to us. So I'm done eating usually by 6:15. And I'll sip on water. Sometimes I'll take some supplements in the evening time. But yeah, 8:00 is a hard stop for me.
And let me just and you're 97 years old, is that, or 98?
Yeah, I'm 140 now.
Oh, 140. Okay.
Yeah, 140.
You look much younger. Well, you heard some great ideas. There's only one thing left. What are you going to do? Of all the things you've heard, how about just taking one thing that Sean shared with you and put it into action? And then don't make a commitment beyond, let's say, a week. Do it for 7 days, whether that's you're sleeping, whether it's you're eating, what you're drinking, or all the other things that you heard today. Just do one thing And then this will be a great investment of your time, effort, and energy to be on this podcast. And then go out and make it a great day.
Go to theultimateyoupodcast.com to get the best exercise training in the world that will completely revolutionize your body, fix your aches, pains, and stiffness, and get you in the best shape of your life for free. You'll also find show notes from this episode.